Committee. The meeting is being web streamed via the Council's YouTube channel, and if during the meeting you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you, and the camera will pan to you so everybody can hear you. Moving to the agenda, the first item of the meeting is to approve the minutes of the meetings held on 5th of March 2024 and 5th of June 2024. Are you happy that those are approved?
Sorry, Chair, it would just be the 5th of March because the 5th of June one was cancelled. So
oh, okay.
Yeah, just a bit of a typo there, yeah.
Okay.
It's 5th of March.
It's just the 5th of March?
Yes.
Fine.
Because the June meeting was cancelled, wasn't it? Yes, it was. We didn't have a June meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody happy? Anybody got any? No? That's fine. I'll sign those. Apologies for absence. Do we have any?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And next, declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest, non-pecuniary interests, as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct. Pecuniary interests, and notice under Section 106. No? That's fine. Okay. Right, so if we move on to the agenda proper, as I call it, we've got the review of access to emergency healthcare provision from our task and finish group that was completed. And I'm really pleased to welcome Councillor Sanderson, and I hope that you're going to speak to your report because that will be very helpful to me.
Thank you, Chair. I think first things first, we need to thank the people who were involved with the review. Not just the members of the committee who served on it, but also the community at large who participated in it, including the Myton Support Hub, where we had a very good turnout of patients and those who had ill health problems. So that was one I thought one of the positive things for this particular piece of scrutiny. We didn't fester in a committee room. We went out and we joined in and we engaged with the public. Again, big thanks to Warwickshire Health Watch. Again, we're very helpful partners to work alongside. And carried out a very good exercise in the Ben Hall. Again, that was very well turned out and with a significant number of carers and service users. So with that as a sort of background, I think it shows us that we did what we could as an overview and scrutiny task and finish group to really engage with the public, to have a highly motivated exercise. I think that's sort of as far as that. In terms of the one-page strategy, which I probably will deal with, it was a little bit too wordy. It didn't focus on emergency care and provision. If you look at the number of agencies it's suggested there, well, it was a bit like the skin on an onion. You could have gone layer after layer after layer, and I'd still be doing this review in 5 years' time. If you want to do psychiatric and mental health needs, set up a task group to deal with that. If you want to do maternity and neonatal services, set up a task group there to do that. What we focused on was emergency healthcare provision and the impacts that the residents have reported back to us during our review. And many of you will know, in some instances, people were waiting up to 10 hours for an ambulance to turn up. Huge amounts of times in triage to Walsgrave. And then discharge was almost a distant dream for many people. And we are aware that even now, in some departments you can wait up to 36 hours to get discharged from the time in which the consultant says that you can leave. So there's what we would strongly advise you to do as a scrutiny group is, as one of the recommendations, keep a watching brief on this. Don't be afraid to go back and ask again what's happening to those primary care services, what's happening to those support services. Are they really delivering the reviews that they have promised in this report? Again, I think there has been a tendency to blame the courier, the West Midlands Ambulance Service, for the failures of the service at either end. People being designated by 111 as non-urgent, which did lead to the delays, or when they get to Walsgrave, getting through the tree, having ambulance drivers sitting, as it says in this report, for I think it's in total across the region for 16,000 hours twiddling their thumbs in the ambulance station when they ought to be out there dealing with patients. So I think that's sort of one of the points I think we wanted to raise. I know that there were concerns when the ambulance hub was removed from Rugby and taken over to Coventry. The Trust, West Midlands Ambulance Service, are saying that, well, it's all a matter of economies and scale and we don't do things by postcodes. That was their response to us. The new player in town is the ICB. Not many people will know who or what they are, but they are very much the gatekeepers to health services within the area. I should just pause for a moment, Madam Chair. And again, they had been told that they will be responsible for things like dentistry, and emergency dentistry is a real problem. Again, they are carrying out a number of reviews to things like I'm trying to think what they are different from the integrated care, even though they're called the Integrated Care Board, they are completely different from the Integrated Care Strategy, which is really quite odd. Again, they in terms of social prescribing, there is a social prescribing base in Rugby, but it's the ICB that decides what resources will come into Rugby. And when you consider just how many empty buildings there are at St. Cross, in a very poor state of repair, that could be used for supportive or special care needs, or they could be respite care, that buildings could be much better used than they are at the moment. So again, I think it's again keeping on UHCW's tail and saying, why aren't you using that building thoroughly? Why aren't you using those premises the way you should? Is it a question of not getting resources from central government to do what is needed to bring that hospital back into full use? So I think that's sort of where we are. I would welcome your comments as a scrutiny committee to this report, and then we can then take it on to Cabinet with our recommendations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that very comprehensive introduction. That's really helpful. Members, do you want to indicate to speak, or anyone want to comment on this? Ramesh?
Just a comment about the Friends of St. Cross. I am in a Friends of St. Cross charity, and I think there are plans for development at the St. Cross. And a lot of services are probably coming to Rugby, I hope. And I think the Warwickshire Health Authority is trying to move a lot of services in the community. And that's, I think, we have got an important role to play, that those services are in the community where we need. So some kind of community consultation, probably where we can do, will be very useful.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, creaking a bit. Thanks for that, Neil. It's useful to hear. I'm interested to know what the response was from CAMS, Mental Health Service for Children, Adolescents. The provision, there is no provision for young people when they're having a crisis in Rugby, and the waiting times and having to go to the emergency department at Walsgrave is very frightening for a lot of young people who are going in crisis, and it's very distressing for families as well. What proposals are there to look at some sort of support being available at Rugby in the future and the long term, as mental health crisis is growing, particularly in young children, young adults?
Thank you, Chair. We did not go into the mental health and the CAMS side of it. We felt it was beyond the real brief, which was emergency healthcare. But I would strongly recommend that you do set up a task and finish group to look at mental health and CAMS support. But I would suggest that it needs to be its own task group, not just tacked on to a report.
Can I respond, Chair? Yeah, well, I'm looking at the emergency care for young people who are self-harming and crisis, the severe mental health crisis in young people that does need to be looked at, because they're only told they go to Walsgrave, and that is quite traumatic for young people when they're in crisis, having to wait in places and seeing things they shouldn't really be looking at. So I think it is something we do need to look at in the future, Chair.
Thank you for the quality of the report and the fact as a task group you've produced a report which is better than performance of many other task groups, so you should take that to your credit. I would recommend that all the recommendations you report, with the addition of Councillor's News, goes to Cabinet for their consideration. What my disappointment is actually with the fact of the removal of the Rugby, the hub, okay, in the hub, which was the reason why the report was raised in the first place. So it's not a criticism in your report, it's really just want to state that on the record, that hub was removed for efficiency reasons, cost. There wasn't the impact assessment of what it meant to people's lives and the loss of life of people, potentially because ambulance services are taking too long to arrive. The stat that's given is 11-minute average. I'm not interested in the average, I'm interested in when it goes wrong and how often does it go wrong. Unfortunately, too many of us have got personal experiences of it going wrong in Rugby. So, not a reaction to your report, it's more a reaction to the fact that the fundamental problem, I think, is still there and unresolved. Okay, but I will recommend thank you for your report, and would, as I just said, would recommend all recommendations, including Councillor's New, go to Cabinet.
Oh my way. Everybody's any further? Sorry.
Yeah. I suppose all of us have had some lived experience of access to A&E services in Rugby, and I think Councillor Lawrence is quite correct. The average is not necessarily what many people are experiencing, and there's also the lived experience of once you get to Coventry having to get through the meat grinder that is the A&E department. Now, I've personally been sat in there for 20 hours with an open wound. It's not something I recommend, and certainly for people with serious health conditions, these sorts of delays are potentially life-threatening. Now, that wasn't specifically addressed in the report as such, but that's the elephant in the room, is it not, Councillor Sanderson?
I think I would agree. Going into a hospital is quite a traumatic experience in the first place for anyone. So, going into a hospital in the first place is a rather traumatic experience for anyone. Being sat around for many, many hours not being attended to, it doesn't do a great deal for your blood pressure, does it?
I'll come back on that. It's not just about blood pressure and minor accidents. I witnessed somebody go into a diabetic coma while waiting to be treated at Walsgrave. That's not something you want to experience every day. Had he been treated in Rugby, he probably wouldn't have had to deal with that. So it really is genuinely something we need to look at more deeply. And I understand there's been funding pressures, but you know, the quality of the service is extremely poor, and that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think that was the underlying part of our report, is we want to see more services in Rugby, more support in Rugby, and not to have... Walsgrave should be what it is, which is what it was built to be all those years ago, which was a major trauma centre. It was, and with high-level specialist clinicians available. Sadly, it seems to be doing more and more of the day-to-day things one would expect at a district hospital, and we feel that that is what builds up the big levels of admissions. And probably part of the problem is possibly because we're so close to Walsgrave. If the ambulance doesn't turn up, people put their relatives them or their relatives in a car and drive there, adding to the numbers already in accident and emergency. I mean, yes, I have had friends and family pass away there. But I've also seen that ambulance station absolutely chock-a-block, every corridor filled with trolleys, poor nurses just trying to find somewhere to plug in the equipment. It's just Walsgrave has been and is frequently overwhelmed by the volume of customers that it has.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make 2 points and pay tribute to Councillor Sanderson's very fair use of the work that outgoing MP did on the survey that ran for some time. I think that was a very fair and gesture, and I appreciate that. I think the elephant in the room is that rugby's going to grow by tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of people, because we continue to have to build on our green and pleasant land for the burgeoning population that we invite to Britain to come and play a part of our beautiful country. And this is not going away, is it? I mean, we will consider the report tonight, but we will be having to revisit it as those pressures grow, and we will see, I'm sure, services added at St Cross. But when you close a public health service for 2 years and tell everyone to stay home, unfortunately, we are reaping what we sowed. And I can sleep at night knowing that I never supported the COVID-only management of the NHS during that time. Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Just one comment. Most important, a good transport service from Rugby St Cross to Walsgrave, and some kind of a constant service can be provided. That will be very good. That will be useful. At the moment, a lot of people who travel there, parking is an issue. That's the main issue. is a wonderful hospital, Walsgrave, but question of travelling there. Obviously, we want more services and St. Cross, but I think better service transport between two hospitals is important.
Right, thank you for all those comments, and I think we've got a recommendation that we send these through to Cabinet to take a look at, along with Councillor New's suggestion, and also that we look at this when we're doing the work programme as well, and where we think we can add value with regard to looking about those regular updates on key performance indicators in the health service, our local health service. Yeah. Okay? Are we all happy with that? Yeah? Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Sanderson, and for all the work that's been done and everybody who's taken part in it, because I can see that it's been a very thorough report looking at emergency access, and that's good, with a lot of involvement from our residents as well, which is exceptional. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Chair.
it. Okay, so if we move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is the verbal updates on the recommendations and action plan from the Scrutiny review, which was carried out by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. Now, we've all had a workshop on this, and we've also had through the action plan, the draft action plan, as part of our agenda, with some recommendations on there. So I think what I'll do first of all is to open it to the floor, and let's have comments from you about how we take, from you after first, and then from members about how we're taking this forward.
Yeah, just through you, Chair, happy to introduce this item and the accompanying draft action plan that has come through from the workshop that took place last week, and just to say, certainly from my perspective, and there was that universal consensus across the room in terms of the workshop that took place. It was very positively received. Certainly it was positive to see members from the Cabinet within the workshop itself, and I formulated the action plan based upon the discussions that took place. The action plan itself is fairly self-explanatory. There are some key points across the actual recommendations, and it is effectively that journey in terms of the universal consensus across all members to embed that strong and valued scrutiny across the council. The recommendations set out key training for all members within scrutiny, outside of scrutiny, the training for officers, and also that overarching scrutiny protocol, which will effectively set out some key pillars in terms of embedding that key element of scrutiny across the council. So happy to support members in terms of the overall action plan, in terms of any questions that you may have.
Members, would you like to comment on, firstly, perhaps the action plan or how we put this together? Councillor.
Firstly, can I thank you, Aftab, for firstly commissioning the study, and then also for the workshop that followed up. Yes, I can repeat that. I think we all came out of a very good consensus on the actions, and I understand that some of the actions are already in practice now, in terms of ourselves as the chair and the vice chair now meeting with Cabinet and meetings occurring to do that. I think the question then is going to come slightly later to John, but so I think we'll save that for the next one in terms of action 2. He's going to financially train us, but then we're going to start looking at how we start looking at the plan earlier in the process through scrutiny. And that was one of the key messages we came through. It was very clear that we should be starting to look at policy and looking at the members of cabinet to answer to policy first. That was one of the strongest messages I received. Understandably today, we haven't got the portfolio holder for finance, but we have to work in terms of having those portfolio holders in front of us. I think it was one of the strong messages that we received. It would be good, as you say, this is a journey, to go through these actions and to see how we can work on each of them gradually. And I think you've mentioned you might be able to start putting some timescales against that, and that would be useful for us to see. So again, thank you for making this happen. I think this is scrutiny, exciting is an interesting use of words, but it's certainly going to be an interesting period of how we can improve scrutiny and the processes of scrutiny. So, thank you.
I'm just being facetious because the cabinet member's here, but I know this Councillor Sanderson loves scrutiny, has always loved scrutiny, and will probably be the only cabinet member who actually revels in coming to this committee. So we look forward to seeing you again.
Chair, just to put the record straight, I am the Liberal Democrat spokesman on partnerships and well-being. I am not a member of cabinet, and you've overly promoted me, Lisa.
Just through you, Chair, and just to clarify to members of this committee in terms of next steps, if members of the committee are happy with the draft plan, then that can be approved. If we can also have delegated authority to myself to implement any changes post this committee, with the overall key outcome, and as per the resolution at July Full Council, is that there will be a report for noting for Full Council in terms of this overall action plan, because it is important that all members have visibility, as I said, in terms of that journey of what we are taking in terms of implementing the recommendations from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny overall report.
Thank you very much for that, Aftab. I appreciate the work that's gone in so far, and as I say, it is a journey, but I think this is the start of the journey, is getting the timing of scrutiny right so that we can look at finance before it's approved, that we can look at budget setting before it gets to the approval process in February, and that we have our timings aligned with for these meetings. This one will be retrospective, but that's fine because that's part of the training. And so it will be good to move on to the next item of our agenda. But first of all, we're going to approve the recommendations in the draft action plan. Are we all happy with them? Yeah? Good. Let's have that approved and let's move that forward to full council. Thank you. Right. The next one on the agenda is Finance and Performance Monitoring, Q1 2024-25. This has already been to Cabinet and been approved, but as I say, it's part of our training session, and John is here to help us and introduce the report. Thank you.
Oops. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for inviting me to Scrutiny to talk about this report. As discussed, this went to Cabinet on the 16th of September. When was that? Monday? Last Monday. So yeah, what we do on a quarterly basis is report the financial and performance position for the General Fund and the HRA. We look at forecasts for the financial year. We also look at key performance indicators, and give an identification of our forecast on reserves. All the information is in the report. I suppose I'll perhaps open the floor for any questions that you might have on the report or anything else finance related.
Just a quick point, just through you, Chair, just a quick point of clarification, just for the benefit of those watching the stream. Just to explain the absence of the portfolio holder. The portfolio holder is on pre-planned leave. This item came on the agenda through the workshop last week, so just to explain that absence just for those watching the stream.
We've spoken outside this meeting about this. There seem to be two significant pressures on finances identified in the report. One, ironically, within finance itself, and another one in traded services. Could you please expand on the background to this? Because I think the finance one is fairly straightforward, but the traded services issue may need a bit more explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Yeah, so in the report, in the cover report, we identify in summary some of the key variances that are being reported at Q1. Yeah, there is a reported pressure in the finance performance, legal and governance portfolio this time round. It's made up of two items. The first one is external audit fees. So what most local authorities do, I think in the end 96% of local authorities, when there's a procurement process for appointing external auditors, it's done through a national framework. As a result of that, the fees were increased. We were expected to incur fees of about 150% higher than what we had through the existing contract. So we set the budget for 24-25 based on our estimates what those costs would be. The realities are when the costs were finally approved and came through to us, they were still higher than what we'd built into the budget. We don't have any control over those external audit fees. It's a contract now for the next 5 years, and therefore we'll need to deal with that through future budget setting processes. Probably the one that's less straightforward and it's not necessarily unique to Rugby Borough Council. It's not necessarily unique to because staffing is an issue in the finance team at the moment. We have got a number of vacancies at the moment, and it's quite challenging to recruit to some of these qualified roles. We are in a position at the moment where we're filling these vacancies with agency staff, but the day rates of those staff are significantly higher than what it would be for a permanent member of staff. So we've got one lead accountant role that's been vacant for approximately 12 months. We've been out 4 times to try and recruit to that person. The quality of the candidates that come through the CV isn't suitable for us to then go and recruit. We've also got issues in recruiting to finance business partners as well. But yeah, it's not something that's unique to Rugby, but it is an issue that we need to address, and it's not necessarily sustainable to have a team funded through agency for a significant period of time.
Yeah.
I think I'll pause for that one because I know you asked 2 questions about the traded services, and I don't know if anyone's got any.
I'd just like clarification on audit fees. 150% hike is unusual, to say the least, is it not?
It is, but I think it's more to do with the contract that was agreed for the last round of auditors was probably set a little bit too low. So I think the baseline contract for the previous audit was £41,000, something along those lines. But with all the additions that took place over the last 5 years, we were paying £70,000-80,000 anyway. So I think maybe, and again, it's speculation now, so I wasn't involved in the process, but I think some of the tender bids for that previous contract were maybe a little bit too optimistic, and as a result of that, there's been a bit of a correction for this time round. But yeah, it's across every local authority, not just us.
So it's not a situation unique to Rugby?
No, it's not. And
Okay.
I think the other thing to say in this, it's not because the level of work has increased because Rugby is a high risk area. It's just the cost of providing the work has gone up as well.
One final point on audit fees, because unfortunately they're a permanent feature of our finances.
Yeah.
Do the proposed fees represent good value for money?
I suppose I don't think I can answer that question. I think what those fees are as a result of a national procurement exercise where the public sector audit team did all the value for money and the contracted. We opted into the process, so that was something that was recommended by Audit and Ethics Committee to Cabinet a couple of years, so December 21. The realities are, if the contract was coming to an end, we would have had to procure our own auditors, and probably acting on our own behalf, we probably wouldn't have got a price as low as what I know it's not, but we wouldn't be able to get a better value because it's the same group of auditors. The auditors that can do can complete local government audits are quite niche, and so yeah, we worked on strength in numbers and getting economies of scale by having 300 councils working together rather than doing it ourselves.
Okay, thank you. I did mention traded services. I too own a calculator, so I've been looking at this in a little more detail. It seems that the greatest pressure on finances is within the parts of the service that use the Sherborne facility. And if I've done my maths correctly, and I'm retired now, so I may not have done, it seems that there are higher volumes going through Sherborne that come from Rugby, but we're not getting the rates per load that we planned on and hoped for when the budget was set. And if you look at the other lines, our costs are also going up because you put more loads through, you'll get more fees for processing. And our employee costs are quite extraordinarily high. Could you expand on some of that? Because I would hate to say it's going to be a permanent budget pressure, but can we have some indication of what mitigation measures have been taken?
Apologies, I'm no expert in this service, but and I think if there was a more detailed explanation required, you may need to speak to the chief officer for that service directly. But yeah, you're right. So we're now a shareholder in the Sherborne recycling facility, and therefore all of our recycling goes to this facility rather than the facility we used to have with Caseback. Yes, there's a pressure in there because the gate fee that we're paying to take our recycling to that facility is higher than what we had in the budget. And you're right, the volatility in the sale of recyclable material means that the rebate that we get for selling that is less. We've done some analysis through Sherborne and ourselves as well, and yes, although the gate fee is higher than what we've got in the budget, the gate fee appears to be quite representative of providers that are in the market at the moment. So I think whether we've been at Sherborne or another provider, it still would have been a cost pressure to us this financial year. Doesn't mean that's an excuse for anything. That's just the realities of it all. What we have found is that the recycling, or the sale of the recycling, the sale of the recyclable material, yes, there are peaks and troughs, but certainly the values we're getting in the first quarter of this year were significantly higher than the last quarter of last year, and there are indications that we will start to get a better rate from there. But I think there's things to bear in mind, as it needs to be the material that we send across there needs to be at a suitable quality to be sold in the market. And I think what all the partners in Sherborne need to do is keep the level of contamination down, because that will help the price. Yeah, we are looking at, we are using a third party organisation to haul our recycling over there. Again, we are looking at ways in order to reduce the cost there. So there are a number of things. We've got a working group set up. This is the chief officer, for traded services, the couple of finance representatives, and also a Deputy Chief Executive who's also a Director on Sherborne. And we are looking at some of the things that we can do as an organisation to try and mitigate any of the cost pressures that come as a result of this. In terms of the question about is this a long-term pressure, one of the things that Sherborne will be doing for us in the next few weeks is give us an indication of what the gate fee will be for next year, and also an indication of what it might be for the next 2 or 3 years, and that will be revised in around December time. So what I cannot tell you is what that value is going to be yet, but I think certainly with that information coming through, we can then start to understand what the potential impact is going to be on the medium-term financial plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for your report. I have a few questions. I think one's going to be related around the KPIs and one's going to be around the reserves. Okay, so the first one around the KPIs. Where I look at this, and I look at where the money is getting overspent, I think I can register that there's an issue in that area. Okay, so whether it would be the turnaround time in getting the houses back into circulation, where we're overspending. So I can understand that. But this seems to be a repeated thing, so in our planning going forward, I'm hoping that we are actually just saying we're going to have to spend more money in that area in order to get the KPI to where we want it to be. Going to your, so there's $500,000 in that or something like that, okay? So it's not a small amount of money. There's $500,000. In your area, I think it's $250,000 between audit and staff. On audit, I noticed the metric was only 56% of audits have been achieved. Now that seems to be, for a novice, that seems to be a pretty bad figure, okay? So is the money you're spending in audit on the additional auditor actually helping that figure? Or have you got a more fundamental problem in terms of people helping the audit process? Because I think that that is, against that metric, is what's suggested. Okay, so yeah, I've got more questions, but no, please respond to that one.
Yeah, and just on the point of the audit fees and the KPIs, I think it's to disaggregate too. So the external audit of the accounts is completely different to the KPI around the delivery of internal audits. The internal audit is what the corporate assurance team delivers in terms of giving us assurance around the processes that take place in the organisation. So they're completely unrelated. In terms of the KPI around the corporate assurance team, yeah, one of the impacts we've had is that this is Q1 and some of the schemes have taken a little bit longer to get started this financial year, but certainly there's no indication that all the corporate assurance reviews won't be completed in year. And what Richard Green, the corporate assurance manager, does is take a audit progress report to Audit and Ethics Committee on a quarterly basis, and if there were any concerns about the delivery of our corporate assurance plan, that will be taken through to that committee. And I can confirm that there's a report that's going to the Audit and Ethics Committee next week, and there's no concerns raised about the delivery of the total plan.
Okay, thank you for the response to that one. So, as I say, it was alarming to me. It's a red issue, but it's not on your dashboard. It's on somebody else's. And that's my problem with the KPIs. Okay, that I think you should be reflecting that there is an audit issue that may infect my trust in your numbers. Okay, so that was really my point there. And the fact, therefore, you spending money with external auditors that if they haven't got the information coming through, it just feels like a double whammy. Okay, right. So as I understand it, there is, in those two areas, you've got £750,000 overspend. You're offsetting it a bit by the fact that because digital hasn't got good enough metrics to show that the customer journey is good enough, you're getting away without spending 130,000 on people on digital. So I find that there's a metric missing on the digital to say that money should be spent, and there's a cost to the saving. So there's no cost with that saving. So if in the round of it, there's, where we're at, £600,000 that is being hit on the general fund, okay? You're offsetting it with a windfall, the windfall on the cost of borrowing. We would love to see the cost of borrowing windfall going to reserves. But as I see it, you are balancing the budget by using the reserves on the general fund, okay? From what I can see from the numbers, and I'm not an accountant, okay? And you're going to train me and everything else going through it, okay? Let me go a bit further then. So when I look at the HRA fund, I can see you've mentioned a hit on the summary of 0.8. When I look at the numbers, it looked like 0.91, but again, I don't see the numbers quite. But you're talking in your things of a hit of £800,000 on the reserves. So I've got 1.4 million hit on the reserves going on here. So this is my question then about what is the policy you've got, and it wouldn't really be your question, it would be to the cabinet holder. What's your policy on reserves? Are you running reserves down purposely in order to balance the budget, or is this something that's going to wash out at the end of the year? What's your view on that?
I'm just thinking, is that a question you want me to answer? Is that a question for me to take away and have a conversation with the portfolio holder? Sorry.
I would prefer that question to go to the actual portfolio holder. Absolutely. But you may be able to express that and correct my understanding.
Yeah, no, and I think, yeah, well, we're happy to take that way with the portfolio holder. And I think certainly I'll be more than happy to go through with the scrutiny committee or any of our elected members some of the detail behind how we set the budget, but certainly in terms of our policy around reserves in our medium-term financial strategy, which I can share separately, our policy on reserves is set out in there. I can't remember the section, but I can certainly send that through. I think the realities are what we are also doing at the moment is having some work undertaken by the Local Government Association and also SITFA as well to look at the robustness of our reserves and our reserve balances. I'm looking to get that report through hopefully next week. That can certainly be discussed once it's been finalised. And also the work with the LGA is going to be looking at our financial constraint for local government, but also some of the flexibilities that we have around setting our budgets. Lost my train of thought now. Talk about reserves, weren't we? And yeah, the budget's set in February based on the information we have at that point in time. I think what you can see with some of the forecasts we've got that some areas of pressure are one-off because this information just isn't available at the time. The net cost of borrowing, again, that's not necessarily a use of reserves. What that's demonstrated is that when we set the budget, it's based on a number of factors, which includes what we think the interest rate is going to be across the whole of the financial year. At this point in time, our budget was perhaps on the more prudent side, and so it does give a bit of flexibility there because any surpluses on that or any other budget means that it does offset pressures elsewhere, which does protect the use of reserves rather than actually use them themselves.
Thank you for that, and we look forward to a response from the portfolio holder on the matter about reserves. The other thing I mentioned was about the KPIs. And so I don't know if this is wholly owned by yourself or there's more another level, but I'm not seeing a strong enough connection between how the money is being overspent against the KPI that drives the need for it, the overspend in that area. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Quee. Yeah, certainly I think our KPIs, there is some work to do, and I think we've changed our approach over the last couple of years, and certainly the way that we present them and certainly the way that we use them. And I think you're right. I think what we need to, and maybe it's an evolution of the report as well, is to make some of those connections, because there could be instances where, I'm making examples up now because I don't want to be specific, that there could be an overspend in a particular service, but they're exceeding their KPI significantly. That's not necessarily, it might be a bad thing when it comes to budgets, but operationally, it's then understanding, well, should we be putting more resource into this service in order to get the maximum benefit? And on the flip side, you could have a service that's completely underspending significantly, but are missing all their KPIs. So yeah, I think there's going to be there is going to be an evolution of it. What we're trying to do is the Power BI dashboard that we've got in a minute is a starting point for a different way of trying to report things. If you look back at our outturn report that went to Cabinet in June, we did try and present the information in a slightly more user-friendly way to kind of pick out some of the key areas across the four strands of the corporate strategy and provide some trend analysis. And I think once we've got the new corporate strategy and there may be some new performance indicators come, we will start to do something a bit more visual and connect the dots. And certainly from a budget setting point of view, we'll know that we've got this I was going to say nailed down. That's not a really unprofessional way of saying it, isn't it? We've got this right, because what we will start to be able to do is performance indicators and performance management will start to inform the budget setting process, and then we'll hopefully get things aligned in that way.
Thank you. And I think if ever there was a debate or a discussion that illustrated the need for Cabinet members to be in front of us rather than officers, because ultimately, although the Cabinet inherited the budget, and I'm not blind to that, you know, they have the responsibility for ensuring what goes on. So, you know, we need to have them in front of us. So my recommendation is that at the earliest opportunity we do just that. I have lots to say about sickness levels that I've been very vocal for years about in this organisation. As you know, it is a furrow that I plough very often, and it's quite clear that we need the portfolio holder for traded services to explain what's going on, because we have a duty to protect our services, but also our people. If we're spending vast amounts of money on agency staff, we need to know why, because something isn't right. But that isn't for our officers. And I really say thank you for, you know, your, you know, great responses tonight. And we'll get the people back, hopefully.
Just through you, Chair, just to pick up on the point Councillor Parker has made. Certainly, if we link that back to the action plan and the workshop that took place last week, it was very clear that portfolio holders should be attending this committee, and certainly that took place during the last municipal year, but certainly it cannot be underestimated that portfolio holders should be in attendance, and certainly that will take place going forward. And it's the gift of this committee to request portfolio holders to attend the committee for relevant agenda items. And just to reiterate what I said at the beginning, in terms of the absence of the portfolio holder today, that's due to pre-planned leave that took place. So yeah, and this is absolutely, as someone who's only just returned from holiday herself, I would be churlish to deny anyone a well-deserved break. So this is nothing to do with the absence of the portfolio holder. It is just the way timing falls out sometimes.
Yeah, it's just to pick up the point on reserves. Being somewhat geeky about these things, I did look through previous annual reports, and there's been a history of building up reserves, and I think it's fair to say that the authority's been quite prudent in doing that. So there are reserves there that are put aside for specific things. There are also reserves that are there for emergencies or for unexpected events. So it's not that extraordinary that you draw down from reserves to deal with extraordinary operational problems. And certainly the large part of the reserve is for anticipated future spend thanks to decisions made in previous years by the council, such as the Town Centre Regeneration Scheme or the Emergency Climate Fund. So I wouldn't be unduly concerned about movements in reserves at this time, but I would be interested in seeing what the trend is in the next quarterly report.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I was just going to.
Yep.
Sorry, I was just going to add to the point that Councillor Freeman made as well, and certainly, if the committee wants some training, I'll go through this in a bit more detail. But the other thing that we do that isn't recorded in the budget monitoring report, but it is in our budget setting reports as we go through the process, is that we do a risk assessment on all of our reserve balances. So we identify some of the, and it's not a forecast, it's the potential impact on our reserves if certain things take place, emergencies or there's a variety of different things, businesses leaving the borough, and so that features into our budget setting process as well. And I think there is sufficient balances in our reserves at the moment to cover the emergencies that we have identified in that risk assessment. If all of the, and some of them are more likely to occur than others, but the reality is that if all of those emergency events took place, there'd be quite an issue with Rugby as a borough, and so it's probably unlikely to happen. But yeah, we've got a couple of years, 2 to 3 years coverage there as well. But again, as part of the budget setting process and part of the things that you may need to call in, we can go through that in a bit more detail as we go through the process.
John, I want to say thank you and I for coming tonight, because I know it was quite short notice. But one of the recommendations we have agreed is scrutiny to be engaged during the autumn in respect of planning for the annual budget, and that obviously includes the medium-term financial plan as well. And so we will want to have a clear voice, I think, in how we go about that budget setting process within the planning stage, rather than just sort of getting to full council and in February. That would be just too late for scrutiny.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to be engaged. I think that's been clear tonight from the questions that you've had from members. We need to put in place that training quite quickly and get ourselves up to speed to be able to be part of that planning process. Okay, but thank you very much. I do appreciate you coming. Do you want to?
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask, it's probably just a practical point, because I know you mentioned at the start of the conversation that you may want to see these budget monitoring reports before they go to Cabinet, and perhaps behind the scenes I can have that conversation with officers, because I think the next one's due to, the Q2 report's due to go to Cabinet in November. I'm just not quite sure how the practicalities of aligning all this, and I think our next budget setting report at the minute is due to go to Cabinet in January. So again, just perhaps behind the scenes, we just see how we can triangulate all this information for you.
Yes, and we are going to have a meeting with Cabinet to go through these things as well. But it is a case of getting them all aligned so that we have an early opportunity to take part in the process. Yeah. And I think it is just about aligning the meetings and getting them structured. And I know that that's going to happen behind the scenes. Okay. Thank you very much, John. The next item on our agenda is the overview and scrutiny work programme. And can I combine that with the forward plan? Because that's pretty much also what we went through at the scrutiny workshop, was that we need to be looking at the forward plan to see what items we would like to scrutinise and put it into our work programme. We have highlighted the budget, the medium-term financial plan, and obviously the reporting process, but there may be other items that come forward. Certainly I'm looking, there's a new corporate strategy to come forward. Now, the timing may be wrong with that because that will come through in October to Cabinet, I believe. So our timing will be out. But it may be that we want to look at the delivery plan of that corporate strategy down the line in our programming. So we'll need to work through that with Cabinet because we want to work with them and get the work programme put together. In the work programme, you will also see there's a number of task and finish groups that were put together by the previous scrutiny committee. I think I would like to take this to the Cabinet meeting with scrutiny chair and vice chair to have a look at whether they are things that they would now like to take forward rather than scrutiny, and to see if they are, whether we want our programme to be more looking at, for example, when you're talking about the live music scene, do we want to look at town regeneration in its totality rather than just the live music scene part of it? So I think we need to have that discussion with Cabinet and to see how we take these forward now, because obviously there's been a change of administration. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just through you, Chair, and just to again try and consider the CFGS recommendations and the action plan. One of the key points was around task and finish groups, around ensuring that there was a focus around task and finish groups, but also the timeline in terms of the delivery of those task and finish groups. So certainly what we can seek to implement within this particular paper that we have in terms of the visibility of the work programme is understanding the number of meetings that have taken place for the task and finish groups, and also engaging with the chairs of those task and finish groups to provide a timescale as to when recommendations are due to come to this committee, to ensure that there is that consistency and also that deliverability for this committee.
A question. I was quite surprised by the, shall we say, the quantity of work that's been set out in these task and finish groups and for scrutiny itself. And given that we are in a new administration, there will be some stuff coming forward because that's the nature of these things. Are we at risk of trying to take on quantity at the expense of quality?
And I think I would agree with that comment, and I would think that we need to, that's why we need to have that discussion with Cabinet and go through, you know, the things that we can put together in the work programme that actually make a difference. I'm very keen that scrutiny makes a difference. We've had the workshop, we've had the report from CFGS that sort of outlined where we needed to go, and I think we need to follow that through. And if these work task and finish groups came through notices of motion, and the report quite clearly says that that practice should be reviewed. So I think we, as part of this, we need to review the work programme with Cabinet and with the task and finish chairs as well, to see if they are actually the things that we want to focus on going forward, or whether they are just things Cabinet would like to pick up and do, because they are the decision makers.
Well, there's some fairly large items going to be coming forward that we can easily anticipate. And John mentioned that SIPFA and the LGA are looking at the finances and see what state they're in, whether they're fit for purpose and whether they can support the corporate strategy. There's a new corporate strategy itself coming through. And when I was appointed to Scrutiny, I thought, great, we're going to be looking at this serious stuff. Now, I'm not suggesting any of the task and finish groups are not serious, but we could be spending far too much time on relatively small issues at the expense of the big ones, and we've got to be mindful of that risk.
I totally accept your comments and actually agree that we need to look again at the work programme very carefully and see what items do go forward, as I say, to make a difference. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, as circumstances change, our priorities should change, and none of us in this chamber can be immune to the devastating impact of the withdrawal of the winter fuel payment. And I, for one, will be lobbying very hard to see what we can do as a scrutiny committee to bring the local voices into this chamber, to hear the impact that this withdrawal of the lifeline from pensioners across our beautiful borough will mean. And I know that everyone will support that as we look forward to place that in our work programme to make sure that our pensioners are warm this winter. And, you know, that cannot come soon enough. I mean, obviously we can't calculate impact until, you know, we can plan it out, but we have to hear those voices. I know everyone will join me in making sure that those voices to assess the accurate impact of what that withdrawal of the winter fuel payment has in our communities. Thank you.
Just through you, Chair, just picking up in terms of the broad point in terms of the work programme, and particularly picking up on the point that Councillor Freeman was outlining in terms of quantity over quality, and again referring back to the CFGS recommendations and the accompanying action plan. What was very clear is that this committee needs to be strategic and have a strategic lens when formulating that work programme, and certainly the Chair referred to the corporate strategy and referred to other items which are certainly within that strategic lens. So I think it's looking back in terms of the existing work programme to ensure that it is meeting that strategic lens a requirement, and then formulating a work programme that has value, which has engaged the Cabinet, which will certainly be key.
I think we're all in agreement. We want to work on the larger, more significant strategic policy things. I think in that, it may be that we are asking for other policies to be looked at than the ones that Cabinet is. So I think the comment has been made about the well-being of people in the borough. So that may be a policy we're asking to be more prioritised than maybe another policy. So that, I think, is the conversation. But absolutely, I think we want to do few at higher quality than the many at low quality. So I think that's where we would want to reframe the task finish groups to actually be about more larger items and bring things together and make them more significant. I think so, as the Chair has talked about, in terms of the live music scene and the urban regeneration. Yeah, let's bring these things together, I think is the sensible choice. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to intervene, but I thought it was worthwhile as an ex-chair of Overview Scrutiny. I couldn't attend the workshop because I was in the other committee room looking at the local plan, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you how difficult dealing with the local plan is. What came out of the workshop in terms of motivating and training councillors to do scrutiny previous years it's been a sort of one-off exercise, and you'll hope that your scrutiny members will appear like magic from nowhere when they haven't in fact been motivated or encouraged to participate in scrutiny. I have noticed in recent years it's been very hard to actually populate task and finish groups. So I would ask you to bear that in mind and perhaps look to make your recommendations accordingly.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sanderson. I certainly appreciate the input. That's fine. I think there are some big ticket items that we need to be looking at. There is certainly around the health and well-being of our residents, around community safety, around the issue that we've got a corporate strategy coming forward. What's the delivery plan going to look like? The town centre regeneration. There's some really big ticket items. The money, of course, around this, because at the end of the day, this council has to be solvent. So those are really big ticket items that I think will engage councillors in wanting to be part of it and wanting to understand. So hopefully that will allay your concern on that, and we can move scrutiny forward in Rugby with all your help. Okay. Are we happy that I think my suggestion on this is we take our work programme and our forward plan, and we take it to the discussion with Chair and Vice Chair, with Cabinet, and then bring it back to you. Is that a sensible solution? Yeah, all happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. Right, I ought to put that on. It has been a really interesting first meeting for me as chair, and I'm really determined that we will enjoy and be engaged with scrutiny in Rugby Borough Council. Thank you very much for your attendance. I appreciate it. And particularly you, Councillor Sanderson, for coming and presenting that report, and John at such short notice. Thank you all.